Hey everyone, so One Piece chapter 1000 just came out, and I think that this was a fittingly epic chapter for the 1000th chapter of One Piece, mainly because of that ending scene, which we'll get to in a minute. But to start with, we opened up with Luffy getting to the top of the dome, thanks to Sicilian and his gang who kept that stairway open for Luffy to be able to get up there. Now what's interesting is that we have yet to see Jack. I have been saying for a while that I think that Luffy versus Jack is in the books at some point, but interestingly we saw that Jack left the top of the dome much earlier after he was kind of, knocked around by the two dukes in their Sulong form, and we saw that Jack, it looked like, had gone down the steps. So I would have expected him to run into Luffy at some point, but Luffy managed to avoid Jack on the way up. Now, Sicilian and his gang, they kept the doorway open, so clearly Jack's nowhere in sight, otherwise he would have put a stop to that. I'm sure we will get Jack at some point, and he's going to pop up in a way that we don't expect. But for now, what's interesting is that Luffy stated that he remembered the Zou incident and them keeping Raizo safe. So you could take that as basically just framing things and that a reminder of what Luffy has seen of these people and why he wants to fight for them, why he wants to protect them. That plays into the ending scene when Luffy's having all of his flashbacks before the fight starts with Kaido. But before we get into that, I would also say that it's possible that Luffy reiterating that he still remembers the Raizo Dono as safe incident and everything that happened to the Minks, that could mean that Luffy still remembers what Jack did, and that sets the stage for a potential encounter between Luffy and Jack. Maybe at some point, maybe Luffy is sidelined at some point during the Kaido and Big Mom fight and has to show off his armament hockey skills on Jack first before shifting back to that, but that's very speculative. I'll get to that later. I'm just saying, where is Jack, and is there still a possibility that Luffy is going to end up fighting against Jack? So, that aside, we got Zoro also getting to the top in a more fun way, I guess, getting tossed up there. That's usually actually what I would expect of Luffy, kind of just like catapulting himself up to the top, but here we got Zoro getting thrown up by Marco. And I'm sure there's going to be lots of people jumping and overreacting and stuff like that with, oh my god, Marco stopped King and Queen at the same time. That doesn't make any sense. Look, we've been through this so many times. When did we see, a couple chapters back, like Apu stopping Zoro and Drake at the same time, and everyone's like, Apu's stronger than Zoro and Drake, and then 2 chapters later it's like, Zoro is stronger than Apu and Drake is stronger than Apu. Like, this stuff happens so quickly. Just wait it out and see. I'm not surprised at all to see that Marco is able to hold off 2 other Yonko commanders momentarily for a panel to help Zoro get to the top. So, interesting to see Marco use his abilities like that. I don't think we've seen him. I think we've been seeing more of the Phoenix Fruit's shape-shifting, I suppose, abilities here, because during Marineford War, we mainly got to see him use it as a sort of shield-based, regenerative, force, like, barrier-type usage, right? Against Kizaru, against Akainu, stuff like that. Whereas here, we're getting to see him use it more in a generally more expansive manner. So, always good to see Marco in action. I maintain that Marco's Phoenix Fruit is probably the coolest fruit in One Piece. It's one of those things that I don't think, I guess you could say the Paw Fruit. Maybe the Paw Fruit or the Phoenix Fruit, those 2 are my top picks. I think maybe I'm leaning towards Phoenix Fruit, but definitely one of the coolest abilities you'll see in this series or any series. So, good to see Marco in action. I doubt that he's going to be able to hold King and Queen off for that long. I do expect Sanji to get in the mix there at some point. Hopefully when Sanji swaps places with the Black Maria fight, hopefully with Robin and Brook. Robin and or Brook, basically, allowing Sanji to free himself up, maybe to go confront Queen. It's interesting also, I think we saw, I'm not 100% sure, but it looked like Queen had a mechanical neck. Might be wrong on that, maybe I need a little clearer image to be able to make out for sure, but it looked like Queen may have had a mechanical neck. So Queen very likely has had some, cybernetic enhancements to himself, which is pretty cool. I hope we get to see Queen show off more of his technological prowess in the battles as they go on. But we already know that he's a master of, chemical warfare and everything like that. But the first thing that we saw Queen do in, chapter 925, he was, tinkering, with metal arm. So we know that Queen has a lot of, not just chemical stuff up its sleeve, but general robotic, cybernetic stuff up its sleeve as well. So I'm interested to see more of Queen's fighting abilities, because Queen has been a bit of a meme for a long period of time. Although Queen has also had a few good moments, we're just not going to get too much into that. Now, the interesting parts of this chapter were, first of all, expanding on Yamato and Ace. I did enjoy seeing more of their dialogue. One thing I definitely liked was that, Ace saying something along the lines of oh, somebody once said the same thing as Luffy did. I would, maybe like to have a drink with him at some point, not knowing that this guy, this dead guy that said the same thing as Luffy was in fact Roger, Ace's own father, who Ace obviously notably hated for the entirety of his life. In fact, that's what him and Yamato bonded over in the first place, so it's just a little bit of irony there, obviously. I did mainly like the Ace-Yamato conversation. I felt like a little odd that it was being placed there earlier in the chapter till I got to the end of the chapter. I mean, the chapter is called Straw Hat Luffy, so it made sense by the end of the chapter. But it made a lot of sense by the end in that, you know, the Ace-Yamato conversation, what it really did was serve to remind us, because this is taking place a few years in the past, before Luffy is even set out to sea. It's reminding us of Luffy's roots, his initial dream that he's had as a kid, the declaration that he's made as a child that even then was hard to believe. We get to see Ace reiterating that even though it's such a hard to believe dream, he still believes that Luffy is somehow going to be able to pull this off. And then that cuts to, obviously in the end scene, all the way later on where we see how far Luffy has come, and he's basically at the point where he's, you know, it's do or die, and it looks like that dream that he had as a little kid, either he's going to take a huge step forward here and actually we're going to start to see it come to fruition, or he's going to get crushed. But obviously, because Luffy's the protagonist, the chapter is called Straw Hat Luffy. It's cool to see that we as the reader know that Luffy is ultimately, like, this is how far he's come from being that little boy with a dream, and he's basically one step away from really getting to that top spot of, like, having the dream in his grasp. So I like the framing of having that flashback scene between Ace and Yamato and just discussing, you know, young little Luffy with his dream at that point in time. I also like the fact that we're getting to see Ace here again, because Ace's death was the first and only time that we've seen in the series that Luffy actually doubted his dream, right? If you go back to the end of Marineford, after the Ace Sabo flashback, we got to see Luffy basically lamenting the fact after the Ace Sabo flashback that he had failed at Marineford, Ace was dead, and that Luffy literally said, "I'm no Pirate King, I'm still so weak." So first of all, with this Ace Yamato scene, we get the reminder of that Luffy has had this dream for such a long time as a little kid. Obviously, even though it seems so impossible and everybody laughs at it, Luffy's always had this dream, no matter how ridiculous it sounds, and Ace has always believed in him. We get the reminder of Ace as a character, which also reminds us of the fact that Ace is obviously dead, and that this Ace himself is the symbol of Luffy's greatest failure at this point, and the moment that Luffy doubted his dream. And then finally at the end of the chapter, we get to see how far Luffy has come and how he has bounced back from that incident. And now he's here facing Kaido and Big Mom and ready to take them on and saying, "I'm going to surpass you." It reminds me a lot of Luffy facing off against Crocodile and saying, this was in the final round against Crocodile, and saying, "I'm going to surpass you," when Crocodile was trash talking his dream. So Kaido talking now to Luffy here, saying, "What did you say you were going to be again?" etc., etc. Reminds me a lot of Crocodile saying at the very end of their final round that, like, you know, the further you go in the Grand Line, the hazier these dreams will be and everything like that. Crocodile obviously having failed to become king of the pirates himself, and Luffy back then saying, "I don't care, I'm going to surpass you." This gave me that same feeling, so it's just exciting to see. But it's just now so much further on with such higher stakes. Like, Kaido is probably the guy that's closest to becoming Pirate King right now, or at least in the eyes of many people, he probably is. He's considered the strongest creature, etc., etc. So it's just cool to see Luffy back then as a rookie talking that same talk towards Crocodile, as he is now towards Kaido, the guy who is, like, literally one step away from, you know, becoming Pirate King. I mean, Kaido and Big Mom, I mean, the two of them are pretty much a lock for getting One Piece if you really think about it in terms of betting odds or whatever, the two of them combined. But it's just, so much of this chapter just felt like references to old things that we've seen before. But just now with the context of, this is really it, the series is pretty close to ending, and Luffy's just standing in front of, like, the two greatest pirates in the world probably today, and saying that he's going to surpass them and become the Pirate King. So, a lot of cool stuff, a lot of nostalgia coming back reading through this chapter. Very fitting for chapter 1000. Elaborating on the end scene in general, this group, I don't know if anybody guessed this particular group of characters being the ones that we thought would be lined up against Kaido and Big Mom. So, I mean, we got Luffy, Zoro. That was kind of a lock for a bit. Luffy, Zoro, Kid, very expected. Law made his way up there at the end, so that's kind of just because Law's, you know, part of that trio of Luffy, Kid, and, Luffy and Kid, Luffy, Kid, and Law. He's part of that trio, he has been since Sabaody. Law was technically the one that set all of this in action, so even though Law hasn't talked much about taking down Kaido, he doesn't really have anything personal against Kaido, it's easy to forget, but Law was the man who set all of this in action, so he definitely deserves a spot among this trio, right? Like, he should be here. It's really his fault that this whole mess started in the first place if you go back to Punk Hazard. So Law was the one who pulled the trigger on all this. Makes a lot of sense that he's there. It's just that, it's just funny that Law can be wherever. Oda has no trouble just moving Law from place A to place B. Like with Kid, you have to show him going up the stairs. With Luffy, you have to spend some time showing him going up the stairs. With Zoro, we need to go through some process. He needs to find a way to get up the stairs. Okay, Marco can toss him, stuff like that. With Law, it's just Oda's okay, time for Law to be up here. He was literally at the bottom floor. He's now he's going to be at the dome with everybody else. Problem solved. So that's a convenient character to probably write if you're, a mangaka who needs to move a lot of characters into one place. And then Killer was the one that I think most people would not have guessed. I think people would have guessed Killer if it's a situation where all of the Supernovae are there to fight Kaido. But I don't know how many people would have guessed, Killer, if it's just 5 characters, I don't know how many people would have put Killer in there. I'm going to say that I think Killer dies because I put a theory out this a while ago about I had said back in chapter 795, not that chapter specifically, but we knew the encounter between Kaido and Kid back in chapter 795. After that, I had released a theory, I think maybe around the time the Reverie was going on, that I believed that it made a lot of sense for Kaido to have killed Killer. And I think a lot of those reasons still make sense. They obviously didn't come true, but I think a lot of those reasons still make sense. I think you can take the reasons from that theory and just apply it to here. I think I could still get that theory right, just with the timing a little off. I still think that Kaido is going to kill Killer, and I think it makes a lot of sense for why Killer is there right now. I do think that there is going to be a significant loss over the course of this fight, and I think Killer is just perfectly set up for that, especially for what it'll do for Kid's character, and I think it's going to... Go watch that theory. Go watch that theory and you'll see why I think it's very important for Luffy to see something like that happen. But I do think that theory still has a chance to be right. At least 80% right. Obviously, I can't be 100% just because we've missed the window. Like I said, that I think Kaido killed Killer already off screen. That's not going to happen off screen, but I think I can get the other 80% right, which is that Kaido is going to kill Killer, and that was always planned. So go check out that theory if you have some time later on. The other interesting thing is that these scabbards, none of them have died. No scabbards died. So that's really odd because they had death flags. They were planting their own death flags. They were coloring their death flags in and writing, "I'm gonna die" all over it. It's just really strange that, Kinemon came out unscathed. Okay, you can't say unscathed. Unscathed? You can't say unscathed because they're clearly beaten up. But by the standards of, death, which seem to be in the works for at least one, if not most of them, they've come out of this pretty clean. I thought Kinemon was 100% a goner. The thing is, though, that it's still very, very possible for that to be the case. It's very, very possible for that to be the case. It's just that it's just not going to happen against Kaido and Big Mom, it looks like. I think it's very possible that Kinemon doing something self-sacrificial or something noble on his way out. I think that's very likely. I just don't know. It'll be very odd for me if all 9 of the scabbards just make it out totally fine after all this. So it'll be interesting to see. I guess now is not their time to die, but I would not be surprised if their time to die, or at least some of their time to die, is still during this arc. One other thing I'll add, though, is that something that was mentioned throughout this chapter was this notion that Roger couldn't do what he needed to do during his time, but there is going to be a generation of pirates coming up that can do it down the line. So it's interesting that it's phrased that way, because I like the idea that it's someone from a generation in the next 20 years can do it, rather than it's specifically Luffy and his crew. But we still need some more clarification on that. And I mean, that plays into the fact that we're seeing the worst generation lined up here, and it's not just Luffy and Zoro, but we've got Kid in there as well, we've got Law in there, we've got Killer in there, and very possibly maybe some more are going to make their way up there, like X-Drake or Hawkins or something like that. But I like the idea that Oda's leaving it a little broader, that it's someone from that 20-year next generation, basically. It doesn't have to necessarily be Luffy and Zoro. Luffy specifically, I'm just talking, in terms of that generation, but it doesn't have to be Luffy specifically. It's still a little broader here, but obviously I guess we know it's going to be Luffy by the end, but I just don't like the idea that the prophecy is saying something very specific, like a pirate crew 20 years from now, born on this year or something like that, is going to be the ones to bring the dawn to the world or something like that. Still just need more clarification on this prophecy and what this prophecy actually is. And of course how Luffy reacts to it if he learns that he's the person that has been chosen by destiny or something like that. Because I just don't know if Luffy would, like, what Luffy's reaction would be, or if he wants to go along with any of that. Now, all of that aside, what I really, really liked about this chapter was, I don't know, I feel like, I want to say it's been a little while. I might be a little rusty on my Dragon Ball Z stuff, but I do remember, so what Luffy did when Kaido and Big Mom are confronting him, I liked, first of all, Luffy's demeanor through all of this, which was much calmer, which I'll talk about a little more in a second. Much calmer. He's not fired up and angry like he was against Kaido the first time. And when Kaido and Big Mom are taunting him, Luffy's not responding to it. He just calmly walks between them and goes straight to the scabbards and basically checks up on them. And I'm saying Dragon Ball Z because I think that is how Goku and during the Saiyan arc, basically, Goku comes back from training with the King Kai and stuff like that, and Goku's all, focused up, he's next level now, he's way stronger, and he just ignores, I believe, Vegeta and Nappa and just goes and checks on probably Gohan, if I'm remembering correctly. But I do remember a very similar scene where Goku just returns, and he doesn't pay heed whatsoever to, the tough bad guys that are around, and just walks over to his guys and checks up if they're okay. Very, very, Pirate King-y move, I would say, at the very least. It definitely feels like Luffy is on something else at this moment. I just like the difference in demeanor so much between now versus the beginning of the arc where he faced Kaido and got one-shotted. It just feels very, very different. And I would definitely say that, that plays into the very next moment with Kaido taking a swing at him and Luffy actually easily dodging it. So, future sight, all of that, the question being like, could, at the start of the arc it was like, wait, even with future sight, Luffy can't dodge Kaido? Is that what's being said? But no, the reality is that you probably need to be you factually need to be very, very calm and composed to use future sight, and the Luffy that we're seeing here is much more calm, is much more composed, and for him, dodging that attack from Kaido was a breeze this time. And of course, we get to see the new attack, Red Rock. As I've understood so far, most of Luffy's Gear 3rd attacks have basically been, animal-based, elephant gun, elephant gatling, stuff like that. Leo Bazooka is Gear 4th, but you know what I mean, he's had some animal-based attacks. Red Rock, a rock is, as we saw in the, translator's notes, rock is a giant mythical bird, and it looks like, I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of Luffy's attacks, now that he's kind of upgraded himself, are more so, I guess, mythical-based. Maybe that signifies Luffy using a stronger move or whatever. It also makes sense just because Red Hawk was his Gear 2nd fire-based attack, whereas Red Rock, so Rock being an upgraded version of a Hawk, is his Gear 3rd fire-based attack. And I like that it was done in Gear 3rd first, but it also looked like much smaller than usual Gear 3rd, which is just interesting. But the big thing is we finally got to see Luffy actually deal damage to Kaido, give Kaido a big punch. I will add to this also. It reminds me again, if you go back to the crocodile parallels that I'm talking about, like I will surpass you, etc., etc. Obviously, this stuff is happening at different times. Luffy told Crocodile he would surpass him at the end of their 3rd fight, whereas he landed his first punch on Crocodile during their 2nd fight. I wouldn't be surprised if it's very similar here. It felt very similar here, where initially Luffy couldn't damage Kaido. Same way the first time Luffy fought Crocodile, he couldn't damage Crocodile. And then Luffy's coming back, re-energized, reinvigorated with a new mentality, with a new trick up his sleeve both times. And with the Crocodile fight, Luffy gets to the top of the palace and takes a swing at Crocodile and is actually able to hit him in the face and damage him for the first time. And Crocodile's like, what? How did that happen? Same thing happened here. Luffy lost to Kaido the first time, couldn't damage him, comes back, new trick up his sleeve, this time in the form of, advanced armament haki. And he is actually able to damage Kaido, and, Big Mom's in shock as to how Kaido was damaged this time. So, I just feel so many parallels right now between, it's callbacks to soft callbacks to very different parts of the series that are happening throughout this chapter. And it's what I would have wanted. I didn't need some huge reveal from chapter 1000. I just wanted a chapter that felt appropriately epic, which it definitely did. And that reminds you kind of why you love this series so much. And this chapter, I think, definitely helped encapsulate, or it helped bring back a lot of the old feelings that you get through watching the story of Luffy from, a young kid. Well, we saw him, from setting out or whatever. But watching the story of Luffy from setting out and saying he wants to become king of the pirates to now where he's on the verge of making it happen, and he's going up like against some of the biggest real obstacles to making that happen. So just really enjoyed this chapter all throughout. I have to say that I think that whether or not Luffy is destined to win this time around, I mean, the same way like he did come back and give Crocodile that punch in their second round and still ultimately go on to lose. Whether Luffy is destined to win right now, whether it's going to be that easy, I don't know. I still don't think so. But it is cool to just see Luffy come back and feel so different than the first time he was up against Kaido. And kind of just get a reminder of everything that Luffy's gone through over the years to get to this point. The other thing that I will say is that I question how much Oda is going to make it sort of a team effort between Kaido and Big Mom against the group. Basically, what I'm questioning is how much drive there is among this current group of 5 supernovas to take down Big Mom versus just taking down Kaido, because the goal for all of them, none of them have, aside from Luffy, none of the characters who are lined up here have any attachment or, dynamic or antagonism towards Big Mom. She's just another obstacle that's there. So I am interested in how the fight split-ups are going to go. I do think everybody's going to get a shot against everybody, in pairs, in duos, 5-on-2, 5v1 at some point, 3v1 versus, 2v1's going on. I don't know. We'll have to wait and see. I do also hope that other Strahds are going to be able to make it up there by the end of this, though. So, that's all for this chapter review. I hope you enjoyed this chapter as much as I did, and if you enjoyed, then definitely like, comment, and subscribe, and I will talk to you all next week.